There come a time when the nation is more important than an individual. It is because of that consideration and in consultation that I say I shall not offer myself for any position.
When you mention the name George Saitoti, most Kenyans will always remember the clip you've just seen. It was not a very good moment for the late professor, but he emerged out of it with dignity, as he always emerged from tough situations. Yeah, moments before that clip was taken, he had just lost it, until Moi had to get up from his seat, former President Daniel Arap Moi, and shout, "Professor Kimya!" People remember that. Anyway, our subject today is not to discuss Professor Saitoti's political past or what used to happen. Our main aim today is to look at what was clearly an assassination, a murder of Professor George Saitoti. And for us to do that, we have to go backwards. Yeah, we have to go back, like the people you see in the clip. Okay? Amongst them, Professor George Saitoti. We have to go back and understand the professor and his sake. Then it will be very easy to understand what happened, where he was in his life at the moment when that accident happened, because this is very significant in us being able to solve this particular mystery. My apologies in advance. I'm not one of those people who glorifies people when they die. I'm not one of those people who say people were very good, they were very great after they're dead. I say it as it is. So on to it very quickly. Professor George Saitoti entered politics very suddenly, actually was brought into politics very suddenly by retired President Daniel Arap Moi. It is a widely known fact that as a professor at the university, George Saitoti drove a very old battered VW, and I happened to be a member of a bank where one day I was at the counter when a check came in, a check which had been returned, which the professor had made out. You know, when checks are returned, they come in an envelope, somebody at the bank has to sign them. At least in those days, that's what used to happen. The check was for a very small amount. So out of this, the professor suddenly jumped into immense wealth and became very wealthy overnight. Okay, I have come across very many situations, very many incidences in my investigative journalism when I'm looking at other things, where the professor has come out as a very, very corrupt person. So clearly he made his money from corruption. Okay? In mind, I'm not saying this to judge him, I'm just saying this so that we understand him, because even a corrupt person, even a thief, does not deserve to die the way the professor died. Everybody, whatever their character is, whatever their background is, has some certain rights as a dignified human being. Anyway, to his credit, George Saitoti played his cards very well, to the extent whereby he'll go down in history as one of Kenya's, in fact, as Kenya's longest serving vice president. Now, shortly after the clip you have seen at the beginning of this recording, Professor George Saitoti fell out with former President Daniel Arap Moi and crossed over to the then opposition National Rainbow Alliance. In the elections that swept Moi Kibaki into power and removed KANU for the first time since independence from power, Professor Saitoti was re-elected and he played a key role in the then coalition government. This coalition government was the government in power at the time of this very, very, very terrible helicopter accident in Ngong. Now, politically, at the time of this accident, there had been certain complaints within ODM that Oro Ojode was getting too close to Professor George Saitoti, because at the time there were cracks which are beginning to develop within, in fact, which are at a very advanced stage within the coalition government, where it was clearly split into two, with PNU on one side, that is Kibaki, Saitoti and others, and Raila Odinga and others on the other side. So Oro Ojode belonged to the other side, but he was extremely, extremely close to the professor. Also, at the time of this helicopter accident, there had been reports, or rather, we knew that Professor George Saitoti had established a big secretariat, an office, somewhere in Westlands, for his bid for the presidency of the Republic of Kenya. He had already spent a substantial amount of money on that particular campaign, obviously probably digging into his wealth, but there were also whispers that he was getting financing from elsewhere. That is foreign powers who were interested in seeing Professor George Saitoti being the next president of Kenya. These were never verified, and of course after his death nobody spoke about it, But we have to consider all these things going forward as we try and figure out who would have wanted to kill the professor. Anyway, Ojode, Oro Ojode and George Saitoti were inseparable. Both of them were in the Ministry of Internal Security and Provincial Administration, with Saitoti being the cabinet minister in charge, and Oro Ojode was his assistant minister. Yeah. Now, normally we do not see such a close relationship between the minister and the assistant minister. In fact, at best, in most cases, the relationship in those days always used to be cold. But it was different with the Saitoti and Ojode. And that is one of the reasons why, when death came calling, they were in the same place at the same time. Now, in the past, I've said that I believe that the main target of this particular assassination was Professor George Saitoti, and that Oro Ojode was just unfortunately in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, today I reversed that position. I changed that position based on new information I have received. Actually, Professor George Saitoti and Oro Ojode were both on the list to die that day. And for a very simple reason. Had Saitoti passed on and Ojode survived, Ojode would have had a story to tell us. Okay? Because the two were very close. So it was very important for those who did not want Saitoti to continue his tenancy in this earth, that Ojode also goes with him. Because had Ojode survived, then the cover would have been blown, would have been told exactly what was up, would have been told what the motive was, who was after him, everything. Now I want us to start by examining two very important events that happened on June 9th, 2012. That was the day before Professor Saitoti and Oro Ojode lost their lives. June 9th was actually a Saturday. At about 6 p.m. in the evening at Wilson Airport on that June 9th, a police air wing helicopter arrived from Mombasa carrying the then police commissioner, Bwana Itere. That same helicopter was to make its very last flight the next morning with Professor Saitoti on board. Now there's a gathering going on in Mombasa at the Mombasa Continental Resort where Professor George Saitoti was on the evening of June 9th, his last evening on earth. Now one clue to look for if you want to know if somebody was assassinated by the state is that usually they are aware of their problems. They are aware that their lives are in danger. Yeah, and we have seen this in. I have seen this in virtually all the political assassinations I've ever looked at, right from Tom Mboya, J.M. Kariuki, name them, all of them. Jacob Juma more recently. All these individuals knew that they were a target for assassination. Okay, now we need to ask ourselves in Professor George Saitoti's case: was he aware that his life was in danger? Are there any telltale signs or clues that can help us to understand and answer this question? Actually, there is. On the evening of June 9th, Professor George Saitoti did not sleep in his hotel room. Okay? Instead, he used what is called a decoy. He got his bodyguard to sleep in that particular bedroom, and he sneaked out and spent the night at another hotel within Mombasa. Of course, Professor Saitoti was always known to be very cautious. He always wore, for example, a bulletproof vest. Yeah, he was always a very cautious person. And it is possible that he had some other good reason for not spending the night at the same hotel. But it is possible, but highly unlikely. The most probable reason is that Saitoti was not feeling very safe sleeping in that particular hotel. And in that room where would-be assassins would know exactly where he is. That is the only explanation. Of course, there are other cheeky explanations. He might have wanted to spend the night somewhere else with somebody else. But while I accept it's possible, it is also highly unlikely in this particular case. According to the work I've done on the ground, the people I've spoken to, the information I've received, it is highly unlikely that that was the case in this particular situation. Now, next morning, Professor George Saitoti and Oro Ojode are at Wilson Airport very early in the morning at about 8:30, ready to take the police air wing aircraft, destination Diwa, which was the constituency the late Oro Ojode represented. They were going for a fundraiser. The flight takes off without incident, and it takes off without incident for the first 7 minutes. Actually, the helicopter flight lasted a total of 10 minutes only. Yeah, the first 7 minutes go without any incident. Problems start after minute 7. Of course, the helicopter had no communication after that with the Wilson Airport or with any other control center. But examining the flight path of the helicopter, at that moment something definitely went very wrong. Because first of all, it veered off course. If you look on the screen, you will see how it veered off course completely. It went round and turned right back, almost went round in circles, and then turned back as if to head where it came from, and that is when it went down. Of course, killing all those who are on board. Okay? Now, there are a few things we need to point out here. First of all, there's a common belief that if a helicopter has an engine failure, it will fall to the ground like a rock. Not true. Absolutely not true. All helicopter pilots are trained vigorously in a process called, or rather in a routine called auto-rotation. You can actually land a helicopter very safely when the engine has failed or when the engine is off, using a process which is widely referred to as auto-rotation. That is, the wind and the propellers are freed from control of the engine. So as they go around in the wind and so on, this is used to land the helicopter safely. In fact, aviation experts tell me it is much safer, that your chances of survival are much, much higher if your engine fails inside a helicopter than in an aircraft. During the whole of this George Saitoti Maneno, nobody has gone in that direction and nobody has mentioned that. We have very many experts in the country, they are all aware of this, but obviously this has been kept away from the public because it would make the public sit up and start asking questions, which those who wanted to get rid of Saitoti and Ojode did not want. And you can do your own research. It's very easy nowadays. Just Google auto-rotation or just Google what happens to a helicopter when an engine fails. Now, auto-rotation is extremely important because the only reason to actually get into this maneuver is not a failed engine. Sometimes the rotors at the tail, you know, those things, the blades which go around at the tail, if those ones fail, you know, the helicopter will be off balance and will start spinning. So usually the pilot is trained to switch off the main rotors and go into this auto-rotation procedure to land the helicopter safely. Number 2, a helicopter is not an aeroplane. Yeah, an aeroplane, and a normal aeroplane would need a lot of space to land. If something went wrong in an aeroplane when it's in the air, the normal procedure would be to turn back to base. Not so with a helicopter. A helicopter just needs a small patch to land safely. So what would happen in case there was any problem within the helicopter, any engine failure or any fire, it is very easy to be able to land the helicopter at the nearest open space you can get and to land it safely, and the passengers will be safe. This did not happen in this particular case, and this is very important to note those 2 points because of what I'm going to say next. Now, of course, the Kenyan public have been misled into believing that this helicopter was just like a normal aeroplane or aircraft. It had trouble. They were trying to turn back to go to Wilson Airport, and then they crashed. That's a general story that the powers that be have been trying to sell to the Kenyan people. Not true. Not true. Something went very, very wrong. Yeah, and we now know that it is possible to land a helicopter anywhere. It is possible to land a helicopter with the engines off, with both engines failed, and to land it safely. It's a procedure which is done every day. It's a procedure every helicopter pilot needs to know. Now we shall end part 1 of this series into the murder of Professor George Saitoti with a very interesting eyewitness account, which was widely reported but then dismissed by everybody. One eyewitness who saw the helicopter in its last moments said that there was a lot of fire, it was burning, and then they said something else. They said that they saw somebody who looked like Professor George Saitoti trying to jump from the helicopter. Remember that? Yes, that eyewitness report is a very important clue, and we're going to look at it in the next part of this particular series on the George Saitoti murder. Don't miss it. Make sure you catch it. You can look in the comments area below for a link that will give you that particular video as soon as it's ready, so that we can be able to get to the bottom of this particular very heinous murder. This is Chris Kumekucha. Thank you for your time.